Welcome to this latest edition of the Real Deal Podcast. I'm your host, the Real Gerald Quinn, recording this on a Tuesday as we discuss the world of sports and pop culture, episode 1035, a new champion. We will flush that out over the course of the podcast, but we have a bit of a breaking news. I'm sure all you NFL fans know this already, and that, of course, is Mike Tomlin's tenure as the head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers has finally come to an end. After 19 years, he steps down. Um, Came in the 2007 season, won a Super Bowl in his second season. At the time that he was hired, he was the youngest coach in the NFL at the age of 34. He retires as basically retires as one of the winningest coaches in terms of total victories, amongst the top 10 winningest coaches in NFL history. Certainly will go down as a Steeler legend with one Super Bowl, two Super Bowl appearances, no losing seasons in 19 years, which is only Tom Landry, the late and great Tom Landry, has had more winning seasons with 21, tied with Bill Belichick with consecutive winning seasons at 19, or 19 winning seasons in general. So if you're Mike Tomlin, absolutely, when he does, when he is done coaching, we don't think he's only 53. Now, we don't think that he's done coaching, but when he is done coaching, he certainly will be in the Hall of Fame. And I was thinking today, um, after the Steelers got embarrassed last night, just absolutely dominated by a Houston Texan team that certainly has a chance to go to a Super Bowl, if not win a Super Bowl, despite some of the offensive struggles they had. But I was just wondering about Tomlin before the news dropped earlier this afternoon. How much can you take? I mean, eh, the franchise hadn't won a playoff game in 9 years. You got to go back to the 2016 season. Last time the Steelers won a playoff game. That was I believe, a home game against the Chiefs, and then they got rocked in the AFC Championship, embarrassing the AFC Championship, losing to the New England Patriots, who of course were going to win the Super Bowl. But uh, this team basically has had a ceiling for the better part of the 2020s. 10-7, 9-8, um, wild card, and that was it. No one that watched that team last night that you saw that won a division. The only reason they won a division because two things happened. Couple things happened in that division. Joe Burrow was injured for a lot of the season, and Lamar Jackson was injured for a lot of the season. That's the only reason they won that division. That division turned out to be a bad division, and Cleveland was Cleveland. So this team, when you look at this team, I know they made the playoffs. I know they finished 10-7. They're not even close. Not even close to competing for a championship. They don't have a quarterback. It will probably be Aaron Rodgers' last game. Guy's 42 years old, and actually, Aaron Rodgers actually had a good season this year. Played relatively well, but he's not he's not going. He has limitations, and he's 42. And I just wonder, like, for Mike Tomlin, when would it get to a point where he just said, like, enough's enough? Like, hey, uh, I know what a championship team looks like. We're not close to a championship. The organization has not done a exceptional job, and the organization has not done a very good job at surrounding him with talent over the last better part of the last 8 to 9 years. They haven't had a championship caliber team in well over a decade, like, or close to a decade. I mean, I probably have to go back to the 2016-17 Steelers, when they had the likes of when Roethlisberger was still playing at a high level, Antonio Brown, Le'Veon Bell, those guys, young Cam Hayward, and then some of those players, Ryan Shazier before the injury, and that type, and those teams that had legit, even though they didn't get to a Super Bowl, but those teams had legit top end NFL talent and they had legit championship, had legit Super Bowl caliber. Well, those were legitimately teams that could have competed with anybody from a talent standpoint. That was a long time. That's a long time ago. Like you're talking in 2026 now. Um, again, I'm not trying to shoot Mike Tomlin no bail as far as how they performed in the playoffs, but again, that team, they had this team has had a ceiling. As far as I'm concerned, over the better part of a decade, and I just wonder, if you're Mike Tomlin, you know what a championship team looks like. You've seen it up close and personal. You've coached it, and you've seen it up close and personal in terms of the teams that you've had to deal with Belichick and the Patriots, with Andy Reid and the Chiefs, to a much lesser extent, Harbaugh and the Ravens when he was there. So I just wondered how long it would take. How many more years of this would he was willing to take, willing to do 9-8, 10-7, first round loss, so on and so on. And apparently enough was enough. And again, I don't think, to be honest with you, that this was a case where this was not they did not fire him. This was not a mutual part of the ways. Trust me, if Tomlin had 2 years left, he has 2 years left on his deal. If he wanted to coach those 2 years, he would have been allowed to coach those 2 years. They were not going to fire Mike Tomlin. It just wasn't going to happen. So this was, to me, squarely his decision, along probably with his family and what have you. Um, I think that it is absolutely the best possible thing to happen for the Steeler organization, and frankly for him if he wants to win another championship, because he was not going to win another Super Bowl with Pittsburgh under this current regime, under the way they're managed, the ownership. It just wasn't going to happen. The game, in a sense, has passed by the Rooneys. I hate to say it, but it has, from a standpoint of how organizations are run, how things are done. They are just like, they needed this shakeup. And if you're a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, you needed it. Things have gotten mundane. There have been the standard is standard, all just tradition. All that sounds great, but the game moves fast. The NFL moves quickly, and when you look at the top organizations right now, in terms of how they conduct business versus what the Steelers are doing right now, the Steelers are light years behind. Like, let's just be perfectly honest. And yeah, they can go 9-8. You can go 10-7. Keep this in mind. The Steelers were 10-7, 3 games over 500. They only outscored, their point differential was only +10. Okay. They have the most expensive defense in the NFL at around like $170 million on just defense. On just defense. And their defense finished what, 16? The defense finished like it was a middle of the pack defense. I believe they finished like 15th in yards, 17th in scoring. Like they were a middle of the pack defense at best. So this team wasn't this organization as currently constructed was not going anywhere. It was not going anywhere. Was not making any inroads anytime soon. Doing it the way that they were doing it. Mike Tomlin absolutely did the Pittsburgh Steelers a favor. He did the fan base. He did himself a favor by doing this. And I'm just, again, this is not me knocking Mike Tomlin. Uh, these jobs don't last forever. These are not lifetime. And I said this with John when John Harbaugh got fired last week. These are not lifetime appointments. And at a certain point, you got to move on. Um, Andy Reid in Philadelphia. Andy Reid did a yeoman's job in Philadelphia. He was a great coach in Philadelphia. He established a culture again. He brought that team to a Super Bowl, like what, 3 straight, 4 straight NFC conference championships. But when it was time to go, it was time to go. And he had, and by the way, he had some losing seasons at the end. It got kind of ugly at the end, but still, that was it. And you've seen the benefit of that. He gets to Kansas City. He's won 3 Super Bowls. The Eagles have flourished as well, winning 2 Super Bowls and being one of the more consistent franchises in the league. But but those two people entities had to get away from each other in order to succeed. Andy Reid, if he would continue coaching in Philadelphia, it would not. He would not have 3 Super Bowls right now. The Eagles would not have multiple Super Bowls if Andy Reid had stayed long just for the sake of staying. And it got to a point with Tomlin and the Steelers where it was kind of like, we good, even though it wasn't good. We just got caught. Like they just got caught up in just the stability and the consistency, the stability and not wanting to change. And again, in professional sports in the NFL, you will fall behind quickly if you don't adapt to how things are done in 2025, in 2026. And I wonder, what are the Steelers going to do, not just from a coaching standpoint moving forward, but what are they going to do as a franchise? Uh, they've only had 3 coaches since 1969. Noel did 23 years, Cowher did 14 years, and now Mike Tomlin, finishes out 19 years. Those days are done. If you get a coach and that coach lasts 8 to 10 years, you consider yourself lucky. Consider yourself very fortunate if you get a coach and he lasts 10 years, if that. Like I said, 8 to 10 years. Those days of 15 to 20, those days are done in the NFL. It's too hard. The NFL changes too fast. The game is different. It is the stress on these coaches, the amount of, and again, I know you have a million coaches to they can delegate, but even with that, it is too hard, too taxing on a person physically and emotionally to coach that long. I mean, 19 years. Think about 19 years, and you look at Tomlin. Tomlin had a similar career to Harbaugh, more winning seasons. Of course, he never like Harbaugh had. John Harbaugh, that is, had a stretch where he missed the playoffs 3 straight years. Tomlin never did that. He never had more than 2 straight years where he missed the playoffs. But similar to Harbaugh, got off to a relatively fast start. Um, uh, in the beginning, 5-3 playoff record. He wins the Super Bowl. He wins the Super Bowl, loses the Super Bowl. But these last, basically this last decade has been, you know, average regular seasons and been horrible in the playoffs. And really, they've only in Tomlin's 19 years, there really only been 3 or 4 years where they had legitimate chances to win the Super Bowl. You could say, oh, 08, he won. 2010, loses to Green Bay, and 16 and 17. The 16 team, those two teams were loaded teams. 16, of course, they get embarrassed by the Patriots in the AFC Championship, and 17, they lose to Jacksonville Jaguars again in a game they had absolutely no business losing. Jacksonville actually just housed them. The game ended up being a lot closer than they tried to make this fake comeback, but the game really was not. Jacksonville, that was the 45-42 game, and that was kind of like the basically the end of the Steelers in terms of being a championship caliber team. Of course, they had some years where they would go on to make the playoffs and what have you. But as far as being a team that could compete for championships, after that 2017 year, they haven't really sniffed at being a Super Bowl caliber team. I know they got out to a fast start in the 2020 year, but they got exposed in the playoffs, losing. I think they lost to Cleveland, and I believe Baker Stefanski and Baker Mayfield lost to them. And that team was never as good as it was as they were. They started out that was the COVID year. They started out 10-0. I think they lost to Washington in Heinz Field. Washington the Commanders snapped their beat them the first snapped their winning streak in 2020. But that wasn't a championship team. We knew that was smoke and mirrors, and that was it. I mean, after 2017, that was it. But again, over the past 4 or 5 years, I really thought Tomlin had basically had gotten the most out of the team, considering that he hadn't had a quarterback, championship caliber quarterback in close to a decade. Ben was done those last couple of years. Like Ben Roethlisberger was cooked his last couple of years. He wasn't like he had the last great year Ben had Roethlisberger had probably was 20, what, 18, 17. So he hasn't. Tomlin has not had a quarterback for close to a decade. Playing in the AFC, you're not in a conference with Patrick Mahomes, with Lamar Jackson, now with Justin Herbert, Joe Burrow, Josh Allen. Of course, you're not. I mean, you're not going to make any inroads in these playoffs. Uh, even C.J. Stroud, they don't have anybody even close to that. To be honest with you, so um, this was a move. This was a situation where I think that Mike Tomlin finally got kind of fed up with. Not, not saying this was a uh like he's leaving on bad terms, but I'm sure it was like, you know what, now is the perfect time just to walk away. Kind of again, I don't know what he's going to do this year. I don't know if he's going to coach next year in 2026. Of course, there are 9 jobs that are open. I'll be perfectly honest with you. And we'll talk about Green Bay later. Green Bay later on in the podcast. None of these jobs right now are appealing. To be perfectly honest with you, and by the way, he's not going to Baltimore. That's not going to happen. I don't. I know. I saw the Steve Bisciotti tweet or whatever he put on Instagram. That's not going to happen. He's not going to Baltimore. If you think Mike Tomlin would go to Baltimore, you just don't know. You don't know Mike Tomlin. Like that's he doesn't. It's not how he moves. There's no way, zero chance that he would ever go to Baltimore. So that's out. So the other jobs, to me, Tomlin, he has to walk in with a quarterback. If I'm Tomlin, I need a quarterback. I'm sorry. I have to have a quarterback. Um, and again, the one knock you can have on Tomlin, with the playoff record, you can knock the playoff record if you want to. The other knock you can have on him, never could beat the Patriots. Never could beat the Patriots. And you say to yourself, well, not a lot of teams beat the Patriots. That's not true. Uh, Remember, the Patriots had a run 0-1 basically to 2018. Those are the years those are their championship years. They won Super Bowls between those particular seasons. Harbaugh has a couple of playoff wins against the Patriots. Okay, Peyton Manning has 3 playoff wins against the Patriots, including a couple of conference championships. So there were teams that beat the Patriots during that run and had, would pick off. I mean, Vrabel ended Tom Brady's Patriot career with Tennessee and Ryan Tannehill. Uh, Tomlin could not beat the Patriots in the playoffs. Again, they were embarrassed in 2016 in that conference championship. Embarrassed in that game. So, want to nitpick his career? That's the one thing that you can say about him. But the guy is a top coach without question. He's going to get the most out of he's going to get the most out of the average player. The players love playing for him. Aaron Rodgers, even only in 1 year, uh, spoke glowingly of him. He carries the highest amount of respect around the league in terms of his peers and what have you. But and again, listen, he got to walk out on his own terms. I'm telling you right now, this was not a situation where he was pushed out. I believe that this was his decision and his decision only. Uh, he had 2 years left, and if he wanted to, he would have been able to finish out. I believe that he would have been able to finish out those 2 years. One of the all-time great wild card weekends. in playoff history, despite what transpired in the last two games with New England and Houston basically running away with those games on Sunday and Monday night. The first four games of the weekend were decided by 4 points or less. Um, let's begin with let's begin in Philadelphia, right? Let's begin in Philadelphia because that to me was the most fascinating out of all these matchups. Not the best game, but the one with the biggest storylines and the one that could have some, that has major could have some major ramifications moving forward. First of all, it was not an upset what San Francisco did to the Eagles. If you watch the Eagles, I picked the Eagles to win the game. I thought it would be a close win, but I'm not shocked or surprised that the Eagles lost to the 49ers. Um, let me get to the and I'll get let me get to the 49er part real quick because I have plenty on the Eagles. If you want to see top tier, top notch coaching, look no further than what Kyle Shanahan has done with the 49ers this year. The 49ers have lost Pro Bowlers, all pro players. This team is not supposed to be in the playoffs. Thinking about being in the second weekend of the playoffs. This team is not supposed to be in the playoffs at all. Lost their starting quarterback for basically half the season. Um, Kyle Shanahan, again, this is one of the great coaching jobs in season that you will ever see. This team is mentally tough. Every year that the 49ers get into the playoffs with Kyle Shanahan, their baseline has been the NFC Championship. They walked into that stadium banged up, um, coming off a brutal loss to Seattle that would have guaranteed them not only the number one seed, but if they would have survived, if they would have won out, they wouldn't have had to leave their own backyards. The Super Bowl was in Santa Clara this year. So they go from a potential number one seed to a six seed, uh, lose George Kittle in game with a torn Achilles, but it didn't matter because that team is coached as well. They are they are coached as well as any team in the league right now, especially from an offensive standpoint. Um, and you saw some of the creative play calls that they had. The Jennings to McCaffrey touchdown passes. They kept the Eagles off balance most of the day, even despite the fact that they did not play a flawless game by any stretch of the imagination. They could not run the game, run the ball. Purdy had two bad interceptions, and they still found a way to win the game on the road. Um, this was as great of a win as you will see. As far as the difference in talent in this game between these two teams was stark. Is stark. There's no way the Eagles should have lost this game. No way they should have lost this game to this team. Um, the Eagles this year, for the talent that they have, it's been a long time since I've seen an offense underperform, considering that the talent that they have. The Eagles were one of the worst second half offensive teams in football. Only the Eagles could lose a game where they win the turnover battle. They win the turnover battle. They outrushed San Francisco. They win the time of possession battle. They're at home. They lose their bet. The other team loses their best offensive player, second best offensive player, best receiver in Kittle, who when healthy can be can play at all, is regarded as probably the best all around tight end in football, and they still found a way to lose. That's how anemic this their offense was, and not being able to score more than 19 points against a good team over the course of a season, which the Eagles did not did not for the last like half of the season. I think you got to go back to the last time they scored more than 20 points against a team that was over 500 was, I believe, the Rams, and I think that was in week 3 when they put up 26 points. Remember, they had the one. They scored a touchdown off the block kick by, I believe, Jordan Davis. Returned it. But this offense over the course of the season played some of the worst second half, some of the worst football that you will ever see. And it got progressively worse. I mean, those again, the performances against Chicago, against Denver, against Dallas in the second half, against uh losing my train of thought here, against Chicago, Dallas, Denver, Green Bay, Detroit. I mean, they had some horrible, putrid second half offensive performances. And in Philadelphia, again, there's plenty of blame to lay. We can blame the offensive coordinator who's out, Petula, he's out. But the bottom line is the stuff like the stuff that you have been hearing and the reports that we heard during the season, in particular one report from a longtime beat reporter and longtime Eagles longtime reporter Derek Gunn. That stuff was real. Like that stuff that was going on. There was a elephant in the room that said that, and that elephant in the room was Jalen Hurts. And Jalen Hurts this season, I told you before the season when I was previewing the NFC, I said in order for the Eagles to repeat as Super Bowl champions, Jalen Hurts would have to be perform at an MVP caliber level. The defense, they would not be able to run the football at a basically almost a historic rate. Like Saquon Barkley would have broke the record had he played the last game of the season for the series, the series season finale last year, regular season finale. He would have broken that record. They were not going to be able to dominate on the offensive line like that. They were going to take a small step back, and even defensively, as great as they were defensively, last year their defense was clear. It was heads and shoulders above everybody's defense last year. This year's defense played well, especially down the stretch, but last year the defense was dominant, and that was going to take a small step back. So Jalen Hurts had to compensate for those things that were just inevitably were going to happen. There was no way that the Eagles were going to be as good as they were last year on at both lines of scrimmage. It just like they were historic last year. What they did last year, having 80-yard run, 70-yard rushing plays, pushing, just physically manhandling everybody. Remember, and I told you this: teams adjust. You can't win the same way every year. That's what made the Patriots the Patriots. That's what made Kansas City Kansas City. You cannot win the same way every year if you want to have if you're going to compete for championships year in year out. If you're going to win multiple Super Bowls, it's just not going to happen. And they tried to do it, and it blew up in their face. Jalen Hurts again. Jalen Hurts is a very good quarterback. He's a very good quarterback. He handles, says all the right things, professional as he can be. Uh, you're not gonna worry about reading about Jalen Hurts, uh, with doing something stupid off the field. Uh, he's a professional's professional. There are limitations to what he can do, and I think that the Eagles needed Jalen Hurts to do what Josh Allen did this past week against Jacksonville. They needed him to do that, and he couldn't do it. I mean, in that game, Brock Purdy clearly outplayed Jalen Hurts. Clearly, with a limited running game, with average receivers, without his best tight end, and knowing that it's on you. The onus is on you. I mean, Kyle Shanahan basically told Brock Purdy, "You're gonna have to win this game for us." In a sense, you're going to play at a level. You're going to, San Francisco's defense played did what it had to do, held the Eagles at 19 points. But Brock Purdy had to go out there and make plays. Kyle Shanahan let Brock Purdy be Brock Purdy, and Brock Purdy made enough plays, and he went out there and like I said, he had the two bad picks. I understand that he had two bad picks, but he also made a number of big time throws too as well, and made a number of key throws in spots when the Eagles had momentum. Boom, got Jennings on this, got Jennings for like 50, like 40 yards, or even the opening, or even scoring first. That was extremely important for San Francisco to score first in that game and to get off to a good start. Even though the Eagles came back and scored 13 straight points, that first score was huge for San Francisco. And they don't have like Kyle Shanahan trusts Brock Purdy. He empowers Brock Purdy. Ben Johnson from Chicago empowers Caleb Williams. They don't empower Jalen Hurts. It's almost like they try to win in spite of Jalen Hurts. And again, this is not a knock on Jalen Hurts. Listen, there are not that many quarterbacks that raise the bar and make their teammates better, or who can make up for a lack of a running game, or who can make up for a defense that's not that good. That list is very short. That's Mahomes when healthy. That's Lamar Jackson when healthy. That's of course Josh Allen. That might be it. That's probably the list. That's it. I can't even say that now about Joe Burrow. He can't stay on the field. Can't say that about I can't say that about Joe Burrow. But Jalen Hurts is going to be very interesting next year to see what Philly does. Jalen Hurts, excuse me, $32 million cap hit next year. Um, has a $42 million $42 million cap hit in 27, which is not crazy, but they're gonna make it. Like I said, this upcoming year is gonna be a make or break year because they can sign him to an extension after this season's over. If they really believe in him like that, they could and will sign him to an extension after in the summer of 2027. But they're gonna have to make some changes. Forget about just Pichula. Forget about just offensive coordinator. But again, there was a lot of talk that he doesn't want to do. He's not comfortable with doing certain things. That he's holding back the offense. And again, it was the elephant in the room. Players were whispering. There were whispers amongst the players. You've heard it from even ex players talk about players saying it, speaking to them about that. You heard LaShawn McCoy yesterday mention something to that mention something like that, where he's talking to players and players basically like, yeah, it is it is Jalen Hurts. So I think if you're the Eagles, you clearly can win a championship with Jalen Hurts. You've done it. You've been to two Super Bowls with Jalen Hurts. You've been to playoffs every year. He's been the starting quarterback. But he has to get back to running the football, and he's gonna have listen. It's gonna like we're gonna see what the offense looks like next year. But he can't have it. He's not gonna be able to have everything his way, and that seems like it was the case this year. And it seems like players were extremely frustrated with that. That's not gonna be. That can't be the case coming up in this year. And I listen. I don't know. I still think it's an attractive job for a offensive coordinator to fix this offense and then go become a head coach. You still have talent, regardless of what happens with AJ Brown. They still have top end talent. Devontae Smith, Dallas Goddard. Um, you have an elite offensive line. Um, so they listen. It's hard to repeat in this era, and it's even harder if you don't have a quarterback that if you don't have him at quarterback. Like the guys that have repeated over the past 20 plus years, Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes. If I go back, John Elway, Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes. If I go back, Joe Montana, John Elway, Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes. It's probably four of the top five quarterbacks of all time in that list. Probably four. I throw Peyton Manning. That's probably four of the top five quarterbacks in NFL history. To be honest with you, regards to the other games, go back. We can go back to Saturday. No surprises with no surprises in regards to the outcomes. Uh, the the Ram game probably was closer than a lot of people thought it was going to be, but the Rams have not played well this year. Um, gotta give. I mean, listen, a win is a win. They were not overly impressive in that game. Stafford does. Stafford has really played well over the course of his career in the postseason. He's been an excellent postseason quarterback. He again the difference between the Rams winning and not winning the Super Bowl was Matthew Stafford. Bring him in, trade Jared Goff to the Rams, or excuse me, to the Lions. So he's had some big postseason performances. Did what he had to do to march them down the field and win a game where they didn't play exceptionally well, but Carolina is limited, as we all know. And Saturday night, you had a comeback slash collapse. I thought the Bears were done at halftime. I did call them frauds, which probably I probably shouldn't have called them that, considering what they've done this year and how well they played, and how many close games they've won. But you gotta give the Bears you gotta give the Bears a lot of credit. You gotta give Keller Williams all the credit in the world. Keller Williams, and you can make fun of the completion percentage. It has to get better. But what this guy, he played well last year with some of the worst coaching that you will ever see that he had last year. Actually, um, now he has a top offensive guy, and the sky's the limit for him. What Keller Williams does have is he does have a it factor that you can account for. We know the physical talent. He can make any throw. He might have the best arm in football right now. He's in that conversation with Josh Allen, Justin Herbert, and a couple other guys. Lamar Jackson is right there as well. He has a cannon. He can make any throw. The 4th and 8 play will be a play that we'll be talking about for a decade. That play, that was the game. You're down 27-16. It's about what 5 minutes left. That the game is, and Kurt Herbstreit was 1,000% right. This is the game. That pass is incomplete. I don't have any confidence that the Bears would have stopped the Packers from possibly scoring again and going up like three scores. Uh, and he makes that throw, and that was that. It set up the rest of the game. Again, the Packers, a boatload of mistakes for the Packers. We'll get on the Packers in a second, but that was a big time win for the Bears. The city needed that win. The franchise needed that win. They had won a playoff game in forever. Um, they, in a worse way, as a franchise, needed. I believe I won the playoff game in 15 years. Um, since the 2010 season when they hosted the AFC Championship and lost to Green Bay. So they needed that game as a franchise. The crowd was unbelievable. I love Ben Johnson's. Look, fuck the Packers. I mean, I'm all, listen. If you talk the talk, walk the walk, then you can say what you want. I don't. We got to a place where everybody's friendly. You see NBA players shaking hands after the game, and no rivalries. I love it. It's Packers Bears. It's not supposed to be. They're not supposed to be friendly. This is the preeminent rivalry in NFL history. These are the two most successful franchises in terms of total championships in NFL history. I think there are two winnings franchises in terms of victories. I think Packers won. I think Packers won, Bears two, I believe, in NFL history. I think the Packers just recently overtook the Bears for that distinction. they're not supposed to like each other. This is supposed to be like Hatfield versus McCoys. This is supposed to be the best one of the great rivalries in all the sports. So yeah, talk your shit. I like I don't know. I don't know. Like I don't know why Dick Vitale Dick Vitale knocking Ben Johnson. Whatever. Dick, go sit down somewhere. Like, please. I don't know why you don't thought that. I don't know why you think that your opinion about NFL matters to us. But anyway, but I love it from Ben Johnson. And again, Ben Johnson, I mentioned this earlier, he empowers Caleb Williams, held him accountable, made things extremely uncomfortable during the regular season, during the off season, told him, hey, this is what you have to do to get better. Period. And Caleb Williams took the tough coaching and look and like I said, Caleb Williams, um, I don't know, boy. I don't know who's going to be the best at that 24 class. I'm still like, don't throw away Jaden Daniels. I know he had one had one terrible injury filled season. I don't throw him away. Still too early for that. Drake May is going to be either first or second in MVP. No, this could be a great 24 quarterback class with those three, and along with Bo Nix as well. But the thing you love about Caleb Williams is this guy in big moments has been money this year. 18 touchdowns and 4 interceptions when trailing, 9 touchdowns, 2 interceptions in the fourth quarter of the game. So the moment clearly not too big for him. As far as Green Bay goes, listen, Green Bay has they they've had a they under LaFleur in the playoffs. They've been bad. That's all there is to it. They've had some brutal playoff losses. They're 3-6 under LaFleur. That loss, the Tampa Bay home loss in the AFC Championship was a tough one. Even though Tampa Bay was talented, that's one. Aaron Rodgers is in his prime. Come off an MVP. That's one at home. That's the one you like following getting embarrassed by San Francisco in the AFC Championship the year before. That was a rough one. They losing to San Francisco at home in the 22 season. Excuse me, in the 21 season, the last season that Aaron Rodgers made the playoffs with the Packers. The block punt, um, and then you lose to San Francisco uh, in the 23 season. Now again, in the 23 season, you blow a lead, but that one wasn't as bad because that was Jordan Love's first, only second playoff game. That year, they kind of overachieved, got to the divisional round. They were only 9-8 that year. They barely made the playoffs that year. But, Quay Walker said it. We have trouble finishing. We've had trouble finishing recently in the playoffs. And again, you can point at, you can point at Matt LaFleur. Um, you have to point at Matt LaFleur. But I think that for Green Bay, uh, that team has a lot of talent. I don't feel like I feel like I don't want to say they necessarily. Again, the Micah Parsons injury was huge. The pass rush definitely suffered down the stretch, but you get a sense that they underachieved this year. There are a couple of teams in the NFL that overachieved this year. I thought the Bears, Steelers, overachieved, but Green Bay, the talent that Green Bay has, Green Bay, they have they may not have one great receiver, but they got two or three guys. You can't just zero in on one receiver with them. I think Jordan Love. I think you can win a championship with Jordan Love. They are just missing something with. There's just something missing with Green Bay that is hard to put your finger on. Now again, I would not fire Matt LaFleur, and I understand he has a rough postseason record. His regular season record is like ridiculous. Like you're talking about winning like basically 64, 65% of his games. Been in the playoffs 5 out of 6 years he's been there. Um, it's hard to find a good coach. So to me, you have to find a way to help him improve as a coach. Because listen, you fire LaFleur, like I don't John Harbaugh is not I'm sorry, John Harbaugh is not a big upgrade to me. Not a big enough upgrade to me. Tomlin. So I think Tomlin's better than Harbaugh. I think Harbaugh wasted Lamar Jackson. Like so, I think Tomlin. I would hire Tomlin before I hired John Harbaugh. I think John Harbaugh. I actually think John Harbaugh is a little overrated. To be perfectly honest with you, if you fire if you got rid of LaFleur and hired Mike Tomlin, I wouldn't be mad at that. But if Tomlin doesn't, let's say Tomlin doesn't want to coach in 26 and that's out, I think that Green Bay will be in his best interest to keep LaFleur, hold him accountable, at come to him saying, "Hey, what is our offense going to look like? Why aren't why are we not one of the top offenses in football? Because Green Bay, from a talent standpoint, should be one of the top offenses in football. They should have a legit top 5 to top 10 offense. You have the quarterback, you have excellent receivers. Even I know the Tucker Craft injury hurt, but I know that injury hurt. We understand that, but even when he was there, their offense was inconsistent this year, and we saw that at times that their offense fell apart. Part of the reasons why they had trouble finishing games because their offense would fall apart in the second half of games to get off to great starts and fall apart in the third and fourth quarters of games. So Green Bay has a Super Bowl caliber roster. Yeah, um, they can use some help probably on the offensive line and what have you. And like every team, there's some holes there, or some holes. But that team has a lot of talent, and that team I just watched that team this year. And they're not obviously they're not my team that I root for. I just watched that team this year a lot of times, and it would be like, damn, that's a waste of talent. Like physically, this team is ridiculous, but there are times where they can look like the best team in football, and then there are times where you like, damn, they got lost to the fucking Cleveland Browns. But I would not fire LaFleur. I just think it's like too hard to find a quality coach or somebody that's going to be as good as LaFleur um, that's out there. So I think they will stick with LaFleur. They're working on a contract. I mean, there are reports that they're gonna be in talks. They're not gonna let him be a lame duck. Like either he's gonna get fired or he's gonna get or sign an extension. It's one of the two. They will not let him go into the last year as a lame duck coach. That's not how Green Bay does business. They like the Steelers, believe in stability. They are very patient with their coaches. They don't make they don't make emotional decisions from that stand in terms when it comes to coaches. To be honest with you, like when it was over with McCarthy, it was over and it was time. And LaFleur, we thought was the perfect guy, and he like listen, he had 3 straight 13-win seasons, and went to back-to-back conference championships his first 2 years. So he knows how to win football games. That's one thing you can't deny. It's just a matter of it translating to the postseason. Sunday's games, Sunday's games, it will the we already talked about we talked about the Philadelphia game. The best game out of the whole weekend was Buffalo and Jacksonville. This game was played at an extremely relatively high level, intense, a very intense game. I picked Jacksonville to win the game, win a close game, but it ultimately came down to the Bills have Josh Allen and Jacksonville did not. I thought that this was one of Josh Allen's best playoff performances, and he's had a few great ones over the course of his career. He had to pick the team on his back and basically will them to victory. They could not run the ball in Jacksonville. Um, Jacksonville physically really imposed their will on the Bills. They ran the ball down the Bills' throat. They knocked around Josh Allen. Doesn't We know how limited the Bills are as far as their receiving core. Um, we see him get banged up a little bit in the game, but his but this is a guy who, when he walks on the field, He's going to be the best player on the field, and he showed you why he's the best player in football, in my opinion. Just a again, I know there have been some he's had some better statistical games in the playoffs. 21, excuse me, the 13 seconds game against Kansas City in the divisional round in uh in 21, uh the 47-17 game against the Patriots, where he had 5 touchdowns, no interceptions. I get it. Those statistically, those games were superior to this. But in this game, he's going up against a better team. He's on the road. He they have no running game. They cannot run the ball, and they can't stop the run. So every possession was magnified. Every offensive possession that they had was important, and took him down the field and did what he did to win. Took him down the field, and he did what great quarterbacks do: lead your team to victory, will your team to the next game. And again, this is a rough loss for Jacksonville because I full heartedly believe that Jacksonville is a better team than Buffalo. Like Jacksonville on the line of scrimmage, defensive line, running game, I believe full heartedly. And then Trevor Lawrence had a rough game, even with the 3 touchdowns, had 2 picks. The first had 1 pick that had 2 picks at the end, but that the last one, of course, was the seal the deal. But even that pick, the first pick he had was a rough one. That was the one that gave life to Buffalo because I thought they were at points in the game where I thought Jacksonville could pull away because they were just physically more imposing than Buffalo. But again, when you have that guy on your team, he gives you a chance to win any game. And listen, no Mahomes, no Lamar Jackson, no Burrow. You look at the quarterbacks that are left in the AFC. A young Drake May in his second year. C.J. Stroud, his third year, but he's won a playoff game in every single year of his career. Credit to him. Bo Nix, second year. Uh, so it's right there in front. It's right there for Buffalo and for Josh Allen to possibly get to a Super Bowl. Their favorite this week against Denver. I like that matchup personally for Buffalo. But this was a brutal game physically. This was a intense game. Every mistake was magnified. Um, Trevor Lawrence clearly did not meet the challenge that you need to meet when you're playing a Josh Allen or you're playing a Patrick Mahomes. Those 2 guys are going to be nearly flawless in big spots. Josh Allen had to learn it against Patrick Mahomes. You have to, when you're playing a quarterback of that level, you almost have to be perfect. You really do. You almost have to be perfect because they're not going to beat themselves and they're going to put the heat on you. Josh Allen, remember early in his career, he had some turnover issues. Did not do a good job of protecting the ball this year. His turnovers were up as in comparison to his MVP season last year. But in his last 6 playoff games, no interceptions. In his last 6 playoff games, won at least one playoff game in 6 straight years. Only Brady with 8 and Mahomes with 7 have done that in the NFL in history of the NFL. So this guy, this guy has been a big time, has been a excellent playoff player, despite not having a Super Bowl appearance, not winning a Super Bowl, or not getting to the Super Bowl. Um, and again, if it's going to happen, it definitely has a chance to happen this year. Not much to say about the Chargers New England game. I thought again it was a close game for the most part. I know the Chargers scored the last third. It was 3-3. Chargers score. Excuse me. New England scores the last 13 points and pulls away. Neither team could protect their quarterback. Neither team could protect the quarterback. It was like 11 sacks in the game. It was a defensive dominated game. Listen, I understand the frustration about Justin Herbert um, in regards to how he's performing in the playoffs. I'm not going to sit up here and try to defend Justin Herbert's playoff performance. He wasn't good. He wasn't good Sunday. But we gotta calm down. keep this in mind. Peyton Manning, one of the five greatest quarterbacks of all time, started his career 0-3 in the playoffs, including a 41 to nothing embarrassing loss to the New York Jets in 2002. It was not a big time Jet team, but not by a stretch of it, not by a long shot. Was that Jet team any good? 41 nothing, 0-3. Did not win his first playoff game until the sixth year of his career in the 2003 season. And that, of course, that was a year where they beat Denver, beat Kansas City back to back, and lost to the Patriots. The Patriots in the AFC Championship. Okay, this they have one of the worst offensive lines in all of football. They don't have a run. They can't run the football. They're throwing passes to Keenan Allen. If this was Keenan Allen from 2020, that would be one thing. But this version of Keenan Allen is done. Lance McCockley, he's a nice little player. Not a number one receiver, maybe not even a number two on a good team. Probably a number three receiver. So they don't have the weapons, and they know that as a franchise. Harbaugh knows that. You just saw Greg Roman out, the offensive line coach out. But the idea that Justin Herbert is not a franchise quarterback, the idea that you can't win with him, you're insane if you believe that, and you just don't know anything about football. Like eh, that guy has every particular skill known to man for an NFL quarterback. Period. Athleticism, arm strength, 6'6", 230, can make any throw. Now, eventually, yes, he's going to have to win a playoff game. Duh, we understand this, but they're not six quarterbacks. Who are the quarterbacks that you would take over Justin Herbert? The obvious ones: Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen. Um, I mean, Drake, you're gonna take Drake. I haven't seen enough from. We've seen 2 years of Drake made. Seen one good. We've seen 1 year where they miss the playoffs. 1 year where they make the playoffs. Next year will be the telltale sign. I still wouldn't take. I wouldn't. You wanted to put Drake May in that conversation? Okay, that's like what, five, four. I think I just gave you what, five. They're not 10 quarterbacks better than Justin Herbert. They're not seven. There may be five quarterbacks. There may be five that are better. Maybe five that you would take. So I think that again, you gotta look at the whole picture. That team. When I talk about teams that overachieve, they overachieved. They played in a brutal division um, with Denver, and Kansas City was not bad until the end of the season. No, they really only had one bad team in that division. That was the Raiders, who were awful. But that team, 11-5, back-to-back years. They need to get some more weapons. Obviously, they'll get both tackles back. Those are two. Those are two top tackles that they get back. And we'll see what happens next year. I trust Jim Harbaugh. We know he's a tremendous coach. They have to get some weapons. Especially they have on with the receiver. They have to get a receiver, a legit receiver. But Justin Herbert, again, you want that guy on. You want him quarterbacking your team. I'm sorry, just the eye test. He passes the eye test when it comes to throwing the football. Now again, I thought that team absolutely overachieved. He got hit more than any quarterback in the league this year by far. He got sacked. Like I said, he took a beating this year. I mean, a world class beating this year. They had to obviously, they'll get their tackles back. They'll get their tackles back this coming year, and they gotta get they have to get weapons. It's just that simple. You can't, out of all these teams on the field in the playoffs, he had the worst weapons out of any playoff team easily. Go through the playoff teams. Even the guys they got eliminated, like Pittsburgh had DK Metcalf. Even the two receivers from Carolina are very good. Those guys are talented. Nico Collins. He doesn't have a guy like that on his team. And of course, last night just an utter demolition, 30-6. The game shouldn't even have been close as long as it was. This game was what 7-6 at halftime. It was 10-6 going into the fourth quarter. It's 10-6 going to the fourth quarter. Um, well, 7-6, excuse me, 7-6 going to the fourth quarter. Before the floodgates opened with a couple of turnovers, a pick, Sheldon Rankins, scoop and score, and then you had, of course, the Bullock pick six for a touchdown. But I we thought that when that game came out that possibly could get ugly. It just took longer than what we thought. And listen, um, again, I picked Houston to get to the Super Bowl. They will not. They won't win this week if CJ Stroud plays another game like he did last night. He was awful last night. The defense absolutely bailed them out. Um, put the ball. I mean, what, three turnovers? Had some bad turnovers. So he and probably the worst playoff game that he's played in his career. He's been a good playoff player. I mean, he joins a short list of quarterbacks who won playoff games in their first 3 years of their career. That list is extremely short. So he's been an excellent playoff quarterback for the most part, but cannot turn over the football in the playoffs as a quarterback. You just can't happen. Now again, luckily for him, their defense is otherworldly. Like that defense is defense is insanely talented at all levels. There are no weaknesses on the Houston defense at all. And they just absolutely took Pittsburgh apart. Pittsburgh averaged only like 3 yards a play. Um, to give you a sense of how dominant that is, Cleveland this year was last in the NFL at 4.3 yards a play. So that that was just a defensive masterpiece by Houston. We'll see, and they certainly will travel up to New England and play match up with the Patriots. You'll have again Buffalo going to Denver, and in the NFC, San Francisco, Seattle, and the Rams in Chicago. So it should be another great weekend of football with the divisional round, which is normally regarded as the best week of football, best weekend in all of football. We have the national championship is set. Miami and Indiana. Last first one, you got one classic and one ass whooping. Um, in regards to the Miami Ole Miss game, just wonderful, great football game. Just a tremendous football game. Just a wild fourth quarter. Um, Ole Miss has, if they didn't have your respect coming into that game, they certainly had to have your respect after what they displayed in the playoffs, beating a Georgia team that a lot of people thought could win a national championship, and really pushing Miami to the limit. They neutralized Miami's pass rush. Give Miami credit. Both defenses I thought were tired in the fourth quarter. That's why you saw offensive explosion. And Miami, Mississippi, Ole Miss almost pulled it out. That was not. I would not. You can't call pass interference on that. Like that's not. No official is going to decide a college football playoff game, especially the national semifinals, with a pass interference, unless it would have to be just ridiculously blatant, and that wasn't. Both guys were grabbing each other. They're gonna let that go. They, I know the Ole Miss fans don't want to hear it, but it is what it is. Um, some redemption for Carson Beck. He made some big time throws, had some big time plays in the fourth quarter, and good for Miami that they played that game on not November, excuse me, on January 8th because they're gonna need every bit, or January 9th, they're gonna need all full 10 days to deal with this Indiana machine. Indiana absolutely took Oregon behind the woodshed and really gave one of the most dominant playoff performances that I've ever seen since the inception of the playoff back in 2014. They have, these are back-to-back playoff performances against Alabama and Oregon that Indiana has looked like an NFL team compared to these two teams that they played in the playoffs. And the landscape of college football has changed clearly. Um, Indiana in the national championship. You have Miami as a 10th seed in the national championship. Um, you have to build your football team on from the inside out. Both these teams have in common is obviously they're extremely well coached. Signetti right now is the top guy in college football right now with the job he's done in Indiana. But both these teams are great at the point of attack. They can both can run the ball. They both can get to your quarterback. They both can protect the quarterback. They both they are great at the point of attack at the line of scrimmage. I don't care how many athletes you have, care how many excellent skill players you have. If you're not good at the point of attack in college football, you're not going to win at a high level. We saw it last year. Ohio State dominated on both defensive, offensive line. All those years, when Alabama was great. Um, what Nick Saban says, what mass kicks ass. That's the philosophy from these two teams. Um, I listen. Indiana is the better team. Indiana has been proven to be the best team in college football this year. Uh, I mean, beating Ohio State and now Oregon twice, embarrassed Alabama. Right now, Indiana is operating at a level that is kind of historic in terms of the level that they're playing at right now. They have a quarterback that's going to be the first pick in the draft that played basically a perfect game against against Oregon. Um, Again, Miami has too much talent and again, it's even though it's in their backyard, don't be surprised if there are more Indiana fans in the game at the game than there are Miami. Indiana has a incredible alumni traveling base, and they've been waiting for this forever. So there will be, I would venture to say that crowd it will probably be 60-40 Indiana. There's been an Indiana crowd at both sites in the playoffs. It was an Indiana crowd at the Rose Bowl. It was an Indiana crowd at the Peach Bowl. So it's been an Indiana crowd at both sites, and I would not, and I would expect it in Miami. To be honest with you, um, it- again, so we can talk more about this game as the days coming up. It's still about a week away. Uh, but it comes down to me. I think Carson Beck is going to have to he's going to have to outplay Mendoza. Like it's way more important for Carson Beck to play well than it is Mendoza. Mendoza can have an average game and they can still could win a close game. Carson Beck has to be spectacular in this game, and despite that win, despite the win against Ole Miss, um, you saw Miami with a number of penalties. You saw Miami really leaving points on the board. Miami really physically dominated that game from the line of scrimmage, but yet uh, probably should have scored close to 40 points. Probably should have had over 40 points. They make those mistakes. They make those mental mistakes against Indiana. They're dead. Indiana, they're like they're like the old Patriots or Alabama back in the day. They capitalize on every mistake that you make. They put the pressure on you to play perfect football, and a lot of teams break and wilt under that. It's a reason why they don't get a lot of penalties. They dominate the turnover battle. Then Indiana is not going to beat themselves. They're too well coached. Lanning after the game said that this was the best coach team in college football this year, and that guy is beyond cocky. That for him to say that is true because he probably in his mind before this year probably thought that he was the best coach in college football. That's how he moves, but they are the best coach in college football. Signetti right now. I wonder. Listen, Signetti is going to have some NFL offers. I mean, I know there's some teams in the NFL that are going to come after Signetti. Now he probably will turn them down this year, but you're going to be hearing some stories about teams trying to get him away, pry him away from Indiana. He's that great of a coach. He is. He really might. He. I mean, again, he worked on the milk. Worked under Nick Saban, so it makes sense. But he reminds me of like even how he talks and how he probably has more of a personality than Nick Saban had when Nick Saban was coaching. Nick Saban has some Belichick type tendencies in terms of personality. We really are seeing the real Nick Saban as a commentator. He's been great with ESPN, but Signetti he reminds me a lot of Nick Saban. And again, he believes in that philosophy of we're going to dominate you at the line of scrimmage first. We're going to dominate you at the line of scrimmage first and let everything else take care of itself. So, should be a fun game. It's already been a win for college football. The fact that Indiana is on the cusp of winning a championship, the fact that you have a Miami is back in the championship picture. Everybody's been talking about college football this year, and the fact that we're still talking about college football going into mid-January, um, transfer portal, the whole nine. College football has won this year. Period. Point blank. So we'll see what happens, and we'll certainly talk more about that as the game approaches next Monday. Best of 1996. Chris Rock, Bring the Pain. Um, this was his first hour HBO special. This special, regarded as one of the just classic comedy specials in recent memory in the last 25 to 30 years. And you really look at this special really saved Chris Rock's career. Chris Rock was not in a good place in his career before this special. He and It didn't work out. He was on SNL for 3 years, from '90 to '93. Did not work out there. Just impossible, basically impossible shoes to fill, and with people trying to pump him up as the next Eddie Murphy. That wasn't going to happen. Um, he had some rough years on the comedy circuit leading up to this special. Really hadn't found his voice as a comedian. Really didn't understand how to perform. It wasn't that the jokes weren't there. It was his. He didn't understand. Didn't have a stage, and he even said this. Did not have a stage presence, and he said leading up to this, he went on. I believe it was at the Apollo, and he had to follow Martin Lawrence. And this was at the time when Martin Lawrence was it. Like Martin Lawrence was the guy. It wasn't Showtime at the Apollo. It was just I think this was a performance at the Apollo Theater, and he said that Martin just destroyed it. He followed Martin, and he was horrible. And he said that performed that. He said he called basically said that ass whooping from Martin basically changed the trajectory of his career. He started going out doing a number of clubs, really honing his craft, and put everything into this special. The way he describes it, if he bombs on this special, the Chris Rock as we know him now would never exist as far as what this led to. Um, this was shot in Washington D.C. at the Tacoma Theater. Again, this is 1996 and 56 minutes long. Again, he goes. It is one of the better performances when it comes to like not just straight comedy, but his ability to articulate on discuss social commentary was at an all time high at this point in his career. Um, you could tell that he put everything into this. Like this was it, and discussing the things that he talked about, like he talks about Marion Barry. He's talking politics. He's talking about pop culture. Like you can tell how well informed he was on on cultural things that were happening, on things that were happening in the world. Um, this obviously changes the trajectory of his career. He goes on to do bigger and blacker, never scared, and becomes one. And again, from '96 to about 2000, or you can even say 2004. He is the guy. He's the top guy. This is before Chappelle emerged and took over in the like early like mid 2000s. Um, for what it's worth, and when this is before that, and that's when that's why I think it was the changing of the guard when Chappelle did for what it's worth in 2004. But late '90s, early 2000s is Chris Rock. He is the biggest comedy star out there. This leads to, of course, the Chris Rock show on HBO. Um, Gets into a couple a big time a couple of movies. Never was a great comedic actor. Like that never like he this guy is built for stand up. He never was a guy who was an impressionist. Wasn't great. Again, SNL wasn't that just wasn't his deal. He doesn't. I mean, Eddie Murphy, and you got guys like Eddie Murphy who do impressions. You got, of course, Godfrey can do a number of impressions. That's not Chris Rock. Chris Rock is not an impressionist. But as far as understanding the art of telling jokes and crowd control and stage presence, and just as a craftsman, Chris Rock in his prime, and this was his prime was basically from '96 to 2004, was as good as it was in the comedy world. Um, Now he hasn't aged well as a comedian. Like his last couple specials have not been just haven't been very good. I like Tambourine a lot more than others. Like Tambourine. Selective Outrage was kind of a dud to me. Um, I do think it got to a point that he's at a point where in his career where he's so famous that he can't go to certain places as a comedian that he could go to when this came out. Like he's more uh conservative in terms of his subject matter, and in terms of, again, you could like look, it's kind of like Rocky and Rocky 3 is like once you become a champion, just that hunger for doing comedy does not seem to be at the level right now that it was back then, which is understandable. Like that, like this stretch, this special, Bring the Pain, like this is his career. If he bombs this and it's not well received, his career might have been over. That might have been it. To be honest with you, he was not in a good place leading up to this special, not at all. So I think that again, I listen. He's the top. He was the top. He was the top guy at that point. And those three of those specials, Bring the Pain, Bigger and Blacker, and Never Scared, probably three of the top specials in the last 25. And again, in the past, in the last uh of the decade, in the decade of the '90s. Like those probably were the top. I mean, I could. Those are three of the better specials in the decade of the '90s. Those two definitely, Bring the Pain and Bigger and Blacker, were definitely two of the top specials in the '90s. Never Scared was great. Um, but this was one of the more important comedy specials in recent comedy history, as far as if it doesn't go right, where that person's career would end up going. I don't think you'll. It might. You can make a case that this is the most important comedy special, considering the trajectory of his career in 25 to 30 years. And I'll leave you with some thoughts on the divisional playoffs. Of course, we have a set. We get the divisional playoffs, and you look at the quarterbacks. You still have Stafford, you still have Drake May, C.J. Stroud, Josh Allen, um, Sam Darnold. Bo Nix, and there's still a sense to me of there's not a team to Purdy, of course, is still around. When the further this thing goes along, the more and more you look at who are the top guys. Like who are the best quarterbacks? Allen is the best quarterback. Stafford and May played at the highest level this year. So keep that in mind. Uh, with keep that in mind moving forward in terms of these games. I really like the matchup for Buffalo versus Denver. I don't like how Denver is playing at the end of the year. I'm not gonna sit up here and say Bo Nix is gonna be terrible in the game. He does have has a playoff game under his belt from last year, but I think that playing Denver, playing Jacksonville, Denver versus playing Jacksonville, I think that Buffalo could get loose in this game and really take it to Denver. That if you're Josh Allen, you can kind of be like, okay, we're getting closer there to a Super Bowl to possibly being a Super Bowl team, and like that getting past that game, that must have feel like they've been let out of jail. With how physical that game is. Um, San Francisco, Seattle. Listen, everything is pointing in Seattle's direction. San Francisco played on Sunday. They got to come back and play Saturday and travel. We know how banged up San Francisco is. Warner will not be ready for the game. At the earliest, he can come back for the NFC Championship. I just don't doubt Kyle Shanahan. I like this team again and again playing. I actually think it's a disadvantage for Seattle that they played just a couple weeks ago. I actually think Shanahan will take some of the things from that game. Again, that was a dominating performance for Seattle. They didn't need much from their offense. They just physically manhandled San Francisco's offense and took them apart. Like San Francisco could not move the ball at all in that game. But I do think there's something to playing a team that that close again in the same within 2 or 3 weeks, especially a divisional opponent. And I expect I lean towards Seattle. I don't say that with confidence. I would take the points. I think this is a field goal game, and I would not be surprised if San Francisco won that game. Bears versus Rams. It's supposed to be freezing there. That will be somewhat of a factor. Um, again, the Rams are a better team. They have better personnel than the Bears. They have the better quarterback. Um, this game will be a fourth quarter game. This would be a game where if you're the Bears, the goal is to shorten the game, keep Stafford off the field, and keep it closer to the fourth quarter. Like that's what the Bears want to do. The Bears have been the best They have been the best fourth quarter team. They've been the best, comeback team, close game team this season. They're comfortable in those positions. Um, I ultimately I think Stafford makes a couple, makes a couple plays um, that are the difference. Uh, Obviously, Ben Johnson has done a wonderful job this year, but you lean towards McVay in these types of games. Um, I think that's a field goal game. I think that's a that would be a one score game. And Houston, New England, Houston, New England could not protect May from the Chargers defense. The Chargers defense is not on it. As good as the Chargers defense was this year, it was very good. It's not even the same stratosphere as Houston. I don't see how Houston. I don't see how New England's going to be able to protect Drake May. Now, C.J. Stroud cannot have 3 turnovers. on the road and expect his defense to bail him out and score points and what have you. New England's defense is far superior uh, than Pittsburgh's was, but I don't see how New England's. Listen, Drake May is in the MVP conversation because they have the offensive line is not very good, and I right now that defense is playing at a level right now where they have no visible weaknesses whatsoever. Um, Really interesting to see how they attack Houston's defense. I picked Houston to get to the Super Bowl before the playoffs, and I didn't see anything that would change my mind, in spite of how poorly the offense played for 3 quarters. I don't. Again, I don't see that. I don't see C.J. Stroud having back-to-back bad performances in the playoffs, and I really like Houston in that game, and I like Buffalo over. I feel very extremely confident about Buffalo against Denver, so I'll take Buffalo, Houston in a rematch, and a divisional championship along with a conference championship and the rubber match with Seattle and the Rams. Those have been the two best teams in the AMC basically all year long, and I think they will meet in the rubber match for a right to go to the Super Bowl. That's going to wrap it up for this latest edition of the Real Deal Podcast. I will see you next time. Have a great rest of your week. Be on the lookout for some content later on in the week as well. So long.